And hello, one and all. This is iCritic Live. This is where we talk about entertainment apps and a little bit of life in between. I'm your host, Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net, and you may have noticed a little bit of a different background, and I decided I hate the city now, so I've decided to just move. I sent a box and postage to get my wife, and whenever I get up to $35, she will be shipped to me with free shipping. It's obviously a joke, folks, but for those of you who do not know, we are actually live on location on the set of Stu Showstack of Stu Show. Hello, Stu.
Well, hello.
Hello.
I'm actually sitting in the host chair, but I have to because if I didn't, your show would not be directed.
Exactly.
So you're the host, I'm the guest.
Exactly. So he has graciously decided to join me today and realize that since I have a very poor setup, we would also use his studio while we're at it, which that is perfectly fine. We inherit these professional microphones, cameras, and even a live studio audience who can cheer upon demand. Exactly.
I don't think they can hear that, but that's okay.
No, yeah, probably not. But, so anyway, for those of you who have never been to Stu Show, first of all, it's a wonderful little show that you do, and you talk about 50s and 60s shows, and you have all these classic TV actors on here, and you're in a room that has history surrounding you, like so many signed photos, actual reels of film, and it's like Disneyland for history, TV, and film buffs. Like, whenever we're talking about things, I always kind of find myself getting distracted. I always notice something new on the shelf or on the walls. Like, oh, interesting. So So we've been doing that here. But one thing.
What is your point?
What is my point about how great it is for us to be here?
Point taken.
Point taken. Okay, so is that point? In fact, one of the things we did with your cool stuff is we watched old movies and TV shows on a projector.
16 millimeter.
16 millimeter.
Here.
Ooh. Yep. Now, for those of you who don't know what a projector is on 16 millimeter, it's how they used to put movies on film. And Stu actually has lots of cool stuff. One of the things we did, I'm a big fan of Rocky and Bullwinkle. Some of you are even fans of Rocky and Bullwinkle. And we watched a very early episode. It was in black and white and it had commercials. And I have to say, it was very interesting, some of the products that General Mills used to make.
Everything with sugar. Tons of sugar.
Yep. And actually, the thing that was the funniest about it was we actually, in that episode, was the first Trix commercial for the Trix Rabbit.
Right. The very first one.
Very first one. And, oh, how depressing was that a beginning. I'm a rabbit, and I love Trix.
The first cartoon character to have an analyst.
Yeah. But I can't have Trix, because I'm a rat. Because Trix are for kids. Mm-hmm. It was very fascinating. And then we watched an episode of I Love Lucy, the wallpaper. Is it wallpaper plaster episode? Wallpaper, yeah.
It's called Redecorating from 1952 with the cigarette commercials that you and your wife were laughing at hysterically.
Oh, yeah, because Philip Morrison, it was like, oh, yeah, they taste good. We have something other cigarette makers don't have, the cigarette hangover. Now, do you know what the cigarette hangover was?
No, but when I got up this morning after a rough night's sleep, I had a hangover, a sleep hanger. Cigarette hangover, I think they were referring to the feeling you have after smoking too much, kind of the dizzy, kind of blah. I mean, I feel that way if I had smoked after one cigarette, but I don't have that problem. You'd have to Google cigarette hangover Philip Morris, and maybe you'd get an answer there. You've got your computer there.
I do have the computer, but that was just an interesting thing for them to bring up. I don't know, it was more interesting that or the fact that they actually advertised the cigarettes as, hey, they're good for you. They'll make you feel better.
Doctors prefer Philip Morris for their patients who smoke.
Yeah, doctors.
Doctors with the degree on the wall and the doctor having a drag. You know?
Yeah. What did I say after they say your life will be changed by
Yes, you'll be
Philip
dead.
Morris.
You'll be dead from cancer.
I think my comment was, yeah, your insurance premiums will change. That's for sure.
Well, back then it was the thing to do. Everybody smoked, everybody drank, and none of those people lived. Very few of them lived beyond 75 or 80 years old, which is still a long life. But I'm 65 and I want to live longer than that, and I don't smoke and I don't drink. But I love watching those commercials.
Oh yeah, because it's just interesting to see how it was back then. But the main feature that we watched was a documentary called The Golden Age of Comedy, which I had never seen before. Now, he showed it to us because I'm a fan of Laurel and Hardy, but I, interestingly, had not really seen any of their silent stuff. My wife had really only seen one thing of Laurel and Hardy, which was March of the Wooden Soldiers, which you apparently don't like.
It's not among my favorites. I don't like it. It was a Victor Herbert opera, which they adapted for the screen and put in Laurel and Hardy in comedy, and I just... Part of the problem I have with Laurel and Hardy is when they do features, they tend to go a little bit too long, even though most of them even only run 75, 80 minutes, and some even are shorter than that. They're good as two real comedians. That's because they work slow. They're very funny. And they're among my favorites. And by the way, I showed you the Golden Age of Comedy because that was my first exposure to Laurel and Hardy. Back in the 1960s in L.A., they had on Channel 9 every night at 8 o'clock something called $1 Million Movie. And they would run the same movie 5 nights in a row so that you could watch it, any one of those, way before VCRs. Okay, so you have to put that into perspective, way before DVRs. And then they'd rerun them Saturday and Sunday afternoons in like a 4-hour block. That was my first exposure to Laurel and Hardy. And from that is how I got interested in them. And I wanted you, being a film buff, to appreciate the silence. Now, I know you're a big silent film fan with The Sheik and Birth of a Nation and all that, but you haven't really seen... We're going to try and see something tonight with Buster Keaton, which I'm sure you know who that is.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and Fatty Arbuckle and people like that, because that's really a perfect introduction to films. You start with the silence and work your way through the talkies up to the Marvel crap that's there today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Marvel movies, I've got mixed feelings about Marvel movies.
Really?
But
I thought you're right in that demographic that every time anyone comes out, you're there in 4K, IMAX, the whole bit. But you don't feel that? No wonder I like this guy.
I go, it's part of my job. And, sometimes they are good, but I've been honest with my viewers. After 20 years of it at this point, I'm kind of okay with seeing something else at this point. I also get real
happy. It's the altitude it's affecting.
Maybe it's the altitude, but I also kind of miss the days when Disney did more daring stuff instead of just churn out like Marvel and Star Wars, and I enjoy them, but it starts to feel a little blah after a while.
One of the few people that did not go see Star Wars in 1977. I refused to stand in line I was like 21. All of my friends went to see it. I never got in. Now, Star Trek I got into, but not when it originally aired in the 60s. I was of age, but I didn't watch it then. I got hooked on Star Trek when it went into reruns in the 70s.
So you've never seen Star Wars?
No, I saw...
Wow.
Well, no, hold on. I was working for Lucille Ball, and they had an office at 20th Century Fox in 84 and 83. Which one of the sequels came out around 83? Not Empire Strikes Back, it was the next one.
Return of the Jedi.
That's the one I saw, and because I hadn't seen the other two, I sat in the screening room at Fox like this the whole time.
It's like isn't that kind of like starting the Godfather trilogy with The Godfather Part 3?
Well, yeah, but the thing is that Gary Morton, Lucy's husband, had the passes, and I didn't want to say no to him, so I called my friend who was a big Star Trek buff, and he drove down to Fox and met me there, and we went to the theater on the lot there and saw it, and he was like out of his seat, and dumped in his pants over everything, and I was like, when is this over? I kept looking at my watch,
Oh, well, it's a shame you didn't watch them in order. They were quite good.
Okay.
So,
well,
but
that's what he said.
But I also, there's a saying that we have, maybe you folks at home have heard about that, how there's too much of a good thing sometimes, and having yearly Star Wars movies, in my opinion, is too much of a good thing. Like, hey, it's special at some point, but if you just have too much of it, like where do you star and which one's
Well,
the
that's
best
what I think has
ones,
happened
and-
with Star Trek. Everybody's
Yeah.
raving about Picard and all. Enough, it's just too much. I liked most of the Star Trek features. I thought the first one was way too long, and it was 2 hours of special effects because they could do them.
Right.
I thought 4 was a really good one, and I thought 3 was good, and I thought 2, 3, and 4 I think were fine, and 6 was okay. 5.
Oh no! Well, 5 was the one that William Shatner directed, and
Yeah, that's the one with Larry Luckenbill playing the Asian guy, right?
I think
That was
so.
5, yeah. And Larry Luckenbill was married to Lucy Arnaz, who was the daughter of Lucille Ball. And Larry is a really good actor, and he thought that was going to turn his career around. And the Star Trek fans, the Star Trek fans pretty much rejected that whole thing.
Yeah.
Let me feel your pain. That didn't go anywhere because we already had Spock doing that with the shoulder.
Right, but it's not the first time that would happen with actors. I mean, when you get into something that's a big name, like you think, oh, this is going to make my career, but like I remember the story, like George Clooney, he's like the first thing he took after he left ER was a Batman movie. It's like, oh, I want to be a movie star. They're offering me Batman. Batman movies are big hits, but he was in Batman and Robin, which is notorious for being one of the worst movies. And you're not missing anything on that one, by the way.
Okay.
Although I will say it actually feels more like the Adam West Batman than
Well,
any
now
other.
I was 10 when that was out, and that was the greatest thing since sliced bread for a 10-year-old. But again, they brought in Batgirl, and they jumped the shark and did all of this stuff. 10, 11, 12-year-old boys haven't matured enough to appreciate Yvonne Craig. Now it's like hubba hubba, but I'm 65 now. Back then, it's like, you brought in a girl? And the show kind of ran its course. The gimmick was over. I'd never seen anything such a huge success and then drop off the face of the earth.
Well, didn't they air that thing like 2 or 3 times a week?
Twice a week. It was like a soap opera. It was like Peyton Place, which was a nighttime soap opera. ABC had that twice a week, and Batman twice a week.
And that's the other thing. When you air that much of it, of course, people are going to get a little tired of it at some point. I'm actually, frankly, amazed that the Marvel and Star Wars movies have not cratered as much, because when you get like 2 or 3 of them,
they're all the same.
Yeah,
they're all the same.
Well, we just saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which I didn't like very much. My wife liked that one, and now in a couple weeks, it's going to be Thor: Love and Thunder. It's like, didn't we just watch the Marvel movie? So it's getting to be too much. So,
but we digressed. What else do you want to say about Golden Age of Comedy? Because it's a fabulous movie.
Yes, it's a fabulous movie. Actually, what it reminded me the most of was the That's Entertainment movies, because also before the VHS days, when they'd have the golden age of Hollywood, they'd try to reintroduce history to people with these compilation films. So that's what the golden age of comedy was. It's like, oh, let's remember the silent era with this movie. And it was really funny. I did sense, and I asked, like, did they take off the subtitle cards?
The
interstitial cards, that's what they call them. Because, they had like a narrator narrating and someone dubbing over, and they orchestrated, which that was a good way to bring new life to it. And keep in mind, this movie's like, is this movie 100 years old, or is it?
No. The movies that they showed were 100 years old, but it was made in 1957.
Okay.
That's why the narrator kept saying, this is what happened 35 years ago. Well, 35 years ago in 1957 was 1922, which was 100 years ago for us now.
So that's where I was getting
the one that
years.
you're going to see tonight, the sequel, When Comedy Was King, was made 3 years later, 1960.
Okay.
And it's the same thing, but just with more. You'll see Chaplin in this one. You'll see Buster Keaton and Fatty Arbuckle and Laurel and Hardy, of course, because Laurel and Hardy. Did you notice in the film they kept going back to Laurel and Hardy after?
They did.
Well, they realized they had a good thing with that. So and that's, like I said, was my first exposure to them, and that's what started me on my way of wanting to collect all their shorts and all of their features.
Yeah, and their shorts and features, for the most part, are really good. So yeah, that was great. And of course, it was also fun to watch on the projector. I actually kept looking over because it's like, it's an actual projector.
Right. It's not on a hard drive being shown on a flat screen TV. It's a projector shown on a regular screen. Like, I don't know, you guys are young, but back in school, when I was in school, they'd bring a projector out to show us a hygiene film, a coronet film or something like that. You're way too young. You don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was young, they would pull out the TV with a VHS player.
Yeah.
And
oh my
that's
God,
how
are
that
you
would
young?
work. Yeah, I'm young. Yeah, exactly. But yeah. So that was great. But one of the things that kind of got me thinking about after I watched it, because like I said, I'm a silent film fan. I like Laurel and Hardy. I had never heard of this documentary. It's kind of, I wouldn't be surprised if it's slipping through the sands of time. And so that's one of the things that I figured you would be an interesting one to talk talk to about, because today's subject's going to primarily be about physical media, preserving memories, archiving stuff is... Well, we won't start there. Actually, the first thing we'll just jump ahead a little. We will start with physical media, since that's what a lot of you people come to my channel for. You, like me, collect physical media, and there's right now the big war. Physical media versus digital. Because right now, everyone wants to just stream things. Some people are just Netflix and Hulu, like, hey, is it on Netflix? Oh, it's not on Netflix? I guess I'll wait till it's on Netflix. And then some people actually buy their movies on digital. They maybe used to buy it on DVD and Blu-ray, but now space is becoming an issue, and so therefore they are now buying it digital. But are there some very big downsides to buying digitally as opposed to physical? Now, obviously there are, but there are also some advantages. Like right now, the big advantage with digital is like space. Frankly, like if you converted all of the movies that you had onto digital, you could get rid of a lot of shelves, and that would probably be a little convenient. But would you always have that movie at your disposal? I shared with you a story yesterday, and even though this is like a more recent movie, we've all seen Toy Story 2, and you are probably all familiar with the bloopers at the end of Toy Story 2. And one of the bloopers involved Woody turning Stinky Pete's box around, and Stinky Pete was talking to a couple girls like, I'm sure I could get you in the next Toy Story movie. Oh, I'm sorry, are we on? Oh, I'll talk to you later, girls, and we'll continue our coaching session. Obviously, it's a joke on the casting couch. That's what the joke is. Well, John Lasseter, who worked on that movie, got into a little bit of trouble with Disney. We're not going to go over everything. Needless to say, opinions about it are out there, and Disney made the announcement that they were taking out that joke from the movie. Now, I had bought the movie on Blu-ray 3D in 2010, and it had it on the disc, and I redeemed the digital copy, so I had digital copies, and I wondered, what on earth, did they take it out of my digital copy, which I redeemed before this was supposed to happen? Well, I checked, and sure enough, they did. My digital copy of Toy Story 2 no longer has the joke, even though I bought it before this whole thing happened, and that was like the first time I realized really some of the dangers of digital media, and I'm actually a little bit more concerned about it these days because the climate is so much. People want to change things and take out offensive jokes or remove actors and replace them with other actors. And so I don't know. As someone who collects this stuff and actually has the film with commercial stuff, I don't know. What do you think about that mentality?
I think it sucks. Anybody that's relying on keeping their library in the cloud, as they say, you're taking a big risk because you're talking about a line being cut. How about the whole film coming down for whatever reason? A hard drive crash, or they lose the rights to keep it up there, or a company going broke. You're going to store everything up there. You're putting your entire library at risk of it going away. Okay? Now, I have risks down here too. I'm up in the mountains now. With the drought, we could have a fire and wipe everything out. But that could happen everywhere. No, I'm a firm believer that you need tangible media. If you don't, you're taking a big risk that stuff will go away someday. And the other thing you didn't mention is laziness. People don't want to get off their butts. You know, I'll stretch this out, but let's say you wanted to watch Mary Poppins on Blu-ray. Okay? All right. You got to get up out of your chair. You got to walk to the shelf. You got to take the disc off the shelf. You got to open the thing. You got to take the disc out. You got to walk over to your Blu-ray player. You got to turn it on. You got to put it in. You got to grab the remote, and you got to go back and sit down and turn it on and play it. As opposed to sitting on your butt, turning on your Roku, going to Vudu or wherever you have the thing stored, finding it on the screen and hitting a button. Okay? That's just pure laziness. Okay? And you will pay the price for that someday.
Yes.
There's more obese people in this world now than there ever was before. And, this is a stupid reason, but it's part of it is people don't want to get up and walk and do something as simple as that. Now, I stretched it all out, but you're talking maybe 30 seconds if you know where the film is and you know where your DVD. Right. People just don't want to do that. So it's a combination of laziness and the fact that, space savers. I had that whole workroom designed with storing that stuff in mind. Now, most people don't have that. Most people don't have the collections that you and I have.
Right.
But there are a lot of people I know that you walk into their living room and it's wall-to-wall DVDs and tapes. And it's just because we're all collectors. You're one of them. I haven't been to your place, but I'll bet you've got walls and walls of stuff, right?
It's like, honey, does the amount of discs I have bother you? Like, does it make your head spin?
I mean, kind of, but that's okay.
Exactly. So you can't hear her, but she's nodding in agreement.
They might be able to hear her, but okay. But like when you guys got here yesterday, and you walked in and saw what I had, you must have spent a half hour just looking at stuff.
Yeah.
But again, a place for everything and everything in its place. I designed that room to store all this stuff. You don't see it anywhere else in our house except in the great room where we watch DVDs.
Right.
You don't see anything in this room. You see books in this room because it's half studio, half office. But if you've been here overnight now, the rest of the house, you would never know I had the collection I had, right?
Right, exactly. So, but it's not just movies or maybe potentially offensive jokes. Like, I remember there was like this big, it was a very brief thing, and this was like several years ago, where people who had bought the Dick Van Dyke Show on Amazon woke up one day kind of with a rude awakening. The Dick Van Dyke theme song was replaced. And of course, obviously, people emailed Amazon about that, and they said, "Oh, we're renegotiating the rights to the song, so for the time being, this is currently not available."
Wait a minute. You talking about streaming the show through Amazon?
Yeah.
The music was taken out?
It was for about a month. It was. They had to redo the music because they were renegotiating the rights to the theme song.
Well, I thought when you acquire the rights to a show, you get everything lock, stock, and barrel as long as you keep it within that realm. In other words, if they lifted the song and made their own promo to promote it, that would be something they'd have to negotiate. But this is the first I'm hearing of that.
Yeah, no. That's the other thing when you put your movies in the cloud. It's really scary because it's like they dictate what's in it and even the content. There have been
that's YouTube. That's why I don't share anything on YouTube anymore because they keep filtering my stuff.
But this is Amazon and Vudu. Like I said, this digital copy of Toy Story, this was the first time I noticed it. They took out a joke. I'd bought it before that whole thing, but because you don't own the movie, you own the license, they could change it. And so some viewers of Dick Van Dyke who had bought episodes of the show on Amazon
bought them.
Yeah, found themselves without the Dick Van Dyke theme song for about a month. There's also that really funny story. You might like this funny if this isn't your favorite movie. There was some father who bought Tim Allen's The Santa Claus movies on Amazon, and he wanted to watch it during Christmas, and his son says, "The movies aren't there." And he's like, "What do you mean the movies aren't there?" He's like, "They're not there." So he emails Amazon, and the Amazon employee probably said too much. But they sent him an email and said, "Oh yeah, we have a license or an agreement with Disney that during the months of November through January, the Christmas movies are exclusive to the Disney Channel. So we don't have those." And he's like, "Even if I bought the movie, I own them?" And he's like, "Yeah, even if you bought them." Now, first of all, that's like really creepy that they could tell you not only what's in the movie, but when you could watch it. But when you buy the Santa Claus, what other time are you going to watch it other than Christmas?
Yeah. Wow. I didn't know none of this. When you buy something and you're purchasing it, you should be able to own it without any restrictions at all. And this is really interesting to me. This is another argument for buying physical media.
So this is kind of blowing your mind that it could actually get to this point.
Yeah, no, I knew none of this, and I'm supposed to be up on all of this stuff, and there's something not right about this.
Yeah. Now here's the good news for everyone. Right now, there is a class action lawsuit, I believe, where people are suing Apple because Apple has removed movies that people have bought. This is another thing that you guys...
That I heard about,
yeah.
But I have Windows, so I don't even know, I don't do anything Apple, sorry.
Yeah, well, where I was forced into being an Apple person. No, we're not going to say why. But, Apple has been caught taking movies down that people have purchased. So people have finally said enough, and they said, we're going to sue Apple. And Apple said they're purchasing a license, and this is why it shouldn't go through. And I give the judge credit. He looked at the thing and said, well, I think when you say buy and purchase, the public has a very specific idea of what that means. And that's the only thing he said to allow the case to go through. But what the judge basically said is, yeah, people's understanding of buying is, hey, you buy this tablet. Therefore, it's yours and you can do what you want. Microsoft can't come in and literally take it away. And like your movie collection, you bought Mary Poppins on Blu-ray. Bob Chapek isn't going to send his goons to take it away because he only wanted to watch Mary Poppins Returns. I'm sure he would only want you to watch Mary Poppins Returns, but even if he only wanted to do that, he's not going to go to your house or my house and take our copies away. But if it's on the cloud, they can do that. In fact, we'll share one more story. And this one does involve Marvel, but you might find it humorous nonetheless.
All right. If it screws them, go ahead.
Yeah, it kind of does. So Marvel made some, well, okay, we should preface this. All the Fantastic Four movies are bad. All of them. But they made a couple, and they were going to reboot the series with Josh Trank. And they decided, well, the old movies are so bad, we want people to focus on this new one, and they delisted the old movies from the stores. And they said, yeah, those movies don't exist anymore. It's just the new ones. And the implications of that were staggering to me. Like, can you imagine if, like, in Hollywood back then, like, once talkies start coming around, the pictures are talking. Heck, even Cecil B. DeMille and Alfred Hitchcock, they're even remaking a couple of their silent films into sound films. What if they had the power to say, hey, those old movies, those silent movies that you grew up with and what really got this whole thing started, they don't exist anymore. Like, that's, when I saw that happen, it's like, that's what probably freaked me the most out. It's like, because what happens if Steven Spielberg makes West Side Story, which he did, and it was excellent, and I'm sorry to say, folks, it is better than the original. But that doesn't mean I want the original to go away because it's history. But what if Spielberg had the clout to say, hey, we have the new West Side Story, people have agreed it's better than the original, let's just delist the old one, let's just get rid of it. It never existed, and right now we have Blu-rays and film and stuff to kind of safeguard us against those things, and yet I kind of wonder, what about the future if, say, in 20 years, someone decides to make a new Wizard of Oz movie, because people have made new Wizard of Oz movies
The
before.
Wiz.
The Wiz, Oz the Great and the Powerful, although that's technically a prequel. But what if they decide to make another outright remake of The Wizard of Oz, the Judy Garland Wizard of Oz, and we're now in the future where, like, discs are not being sold in stores anymore. Everything is the cloud, and someone says, we don't want to be compared to the original, and the original's, 80 years old or whatever it is at that point.
It'd be 100.
It would be 100 at that point. Okay. See how I'm getting the 100 and the 80s mixed up, folks? And they say, it's 100 years old. That's long enough. We've got like a new version of Over the Rainbow sung by Lady Gaga now. Let's just delist it. And there's nothing we can do about that.
It would be far enough in the future. You'll still be around.
I will still be around.
I'll be around too, hopefully. But even if I'm not, the only people that'll be whining about it, because the generation that follows yours and that follows that one won't even know it exists unless Turner Classic Movies or something like that is broadcasting it, or because you're not going to get them to pull it because they own it.
Right.
Well, they'd probably produce the new one because they own it. Although I think the story itself is public domain now, so anybody can do it as long as there aren't similarities to what they did.
Right. I think the Red Slippers, that's like kind of a movie thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. They'd have to get the L. Frank Baum book out and follow it exact so that it doesn't look anything like the MGM one.
Yep.
Or
they could take the characters and just make their own original thing if they want.
Right. That might be what they do. But you see, most of the people that would care about the original, with some exceptions, would be long gone by then, so they wouldn't be around to protest.
Yeah, but
okay. So and again, all the stuff's starting to come public domain now. Steamboat Willie, Disney, all that stuff, because they kept extending the copyrights. Well, that's it. They're not going to push it anymore. Why? Because the people that wanted them protected are all dying out, and it doesn't matter to them anymore. Disney doesn't care about Mickey Mouse anymore as much as they care about Star Wars and Marvel.
Right.
Okay. So they're going to start letting that stuff go, and they won't care about it.
Yep. Well, they care so little about their archive stuff that
since Dave Smith died, yeah.
Yeah, but a friend of mine pointed out, and this was kind of amazing, like, it's been more than a year since they've uploaded any of their classic shorts or Walt era programs.
You're talking on Disney
on
Plus?
Disney Plus, yeah. And it's like they've got hundreds of episodes and specials.
Oh,
and
tell me about it. All the Mickey
cartoons.
Mouse clubs, all the Wonderful World of Colors.
Yep.
You know, they own the Fox library too, and they haven't put any of the Fox series up, like Room 222, stuff that I grew up on, because nobody except people my age are going to watch it, and there's probably, this is another problem, very few people my age that subscribe to Disney Plus. They're all in your age bracket, and you guys have never even heard of half the stuff I just mentioned. So
Oh, no, I've heard of
you
it.
have, because you're into this.
Right.
But you find me 10 people 5 or 6 years younger than you that are into this like we are.
Well, I can find at least one person. But
I said
that's
5 to 10.
Yeah,
You found
so-
one. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
I mean,
So it's a losing battle. You know, my daughter is going to, she says she will maintain this stuff after I'm gone. And if I'm lucky, I'll get 30 more years, okay? Whatever hasn't deteriorated on its own at that point, she's taking charge of. I have it in my will. It's not to be sold on eBay. I have a list of people on that that are to be given the stuff on their own dime. They have to come and take it because they will preserve it. The guy who directed our documentary, for one, C.J. Wallace, because he's like us, he'll preserve it. I'll put you on that list too if you want.
if you trust me with it,
Well, you're going to be around a lot longer than I am.
Yeah.
In 30 years, you'll be my age, and I'll be, reaching for my cane or my walker then if I'm even still around. So
yeah. Well, I'm glad that. And I'm glad it's not just me. I'm glad there's other people my age who.
There's a few.
There's a few.
But most people don't care. They're into their phones, and they're watching movies on their phones now. On a little screen like that, they're watching a movie that somebody poured their heart out to make, and movies deserve to be seen on a big screen. I don't go to the theaters much anymore because we have a 55-inch TV, and for me, that's just fine. When you go to the movies now, it's $20 to park, it's $25 a ticket, it's $20 for a little sliver of popcorn, and you got people with cell phones and screaming babies. Stay at home, wait an extra month, watch it at home, and watch it the way it's meant to be seen, not in a crowd of people that are wrecking the experience for you.
Well, that's a whole nother topic
Well,
because
see,
those people.
you got me. I'm the old man on the park bench in Santa Monica, screaming and whining about the good old days.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel now.
Well-
I've turned into my grandfather. So
Yeah, well, I mean, I think most of us who like going to the movies definitely decry the people who are on the phones and have the crying baby. That's like
I can't put up, not when I'm paying that kind of money. If I was still paying $5-6 to see a movie, okay, I deserve it. But not when before you even see the movie, you plop down $40. Something's wrong somewhere.
Yeah, that's and movie theaters have no one but themselves to blame for pushing people like you and people who want to have like a good time at the theaters away. But again, that was kind of like a side tangent. But yeah, the real crux of this whole thing is like the more we become reliant on the cloud and things like that, the more I actually worry. And especially after watching this movie, because I'd never heard of this documentary and it was wonderful. And it's like, oh, this was a great way to introduce people to silent films and things like that. But where is it? Like, I looked it up on my Just Watch app, which, by the way, for those of you who are not aware, this is not a sponsorship, but Just Watch is an app where if you look up a movie or a show, it will actually tell you where you can stream it, whether that's through purchasing or whether you can stream it for free. And it is by far the most convenient app in the world for cinephiles and TV lovers of all. But I looked it up and there was nowhere to find it.
It was on Amazon last year for a very short time. It was part of Amazon Prime.
It's not on Amazon Prime now, apparently.
Okay. Did you check to see if it's available on DVD?
I did not check. I mean, like,
Or is that a dirty word today since we're talking about the
oh
cloud?
no. I will. That will be the next thing. But I'd look at the DVD later. I was just for the argument's sake, because we are talking about like a future that's heading away from DVD. I looked it up and it wasn't on any streaming service. In fact, when you said that your favorite Dick Van Dyke movie is the comic, which I haven't seen, in fact, you have a poster of it right there signed by him.
I have a print in the archives.
Yeah, it's like, oh, real. And I was like, oh, I want to see that. And so I looked just to see if there's any place I could stream it. It's nowhere. Now,
MOD, I think, Amazon.
Yeah, you've pointed out that I can get it on MOD, and I might just have to do it, especially since Carl Reiner wrote and directed it. So it's like, okay, that sounds like something I would definitely.
Oh yeah. Oh, you'll love
want
it.
to see.
You'll love it. They captured the silent days. What we saw last night in reality, Carl and Aaron Rubin and Dick Van Dyke captured it in this film. That's why I loved it so much, because when I saw it for the first time, I was 15, and it captured like the spirit, and the art direction is really good. You feel like you're back in the 20s with Laurel and Hardy and all those people, and that's why I think you'll like it.
Well, I'm really looking forward to purchasing my MOD and watching it. But there's like another sad thing. Like, you recommend this movie. It's apparently great. I believe it's great because of the talent. I mean, though even Billy Wilder made a bad movie, and so did Hitchcock. So things happen. But it scares me. It's like it's Dick Van Dyke and it's Carl Reiner, and it's like it's unthinkable to me to think that in an age of streaming they just aren't there. And it really has me worried, like, boy, what is it going to be like in 30, 40 years? Like right now, we thankfully have some services like the Criterion Channel, who me and my wife have been watching 40s Billy Wilder films like Double Indemnity and the Best Picture winner, The Lost Weekend, with Ray Milland. And thank goodness the Criterion Channel, still does their thing. But what if one day the Criterion Channel is not profitable enough? Can we trust the studios to preserve those movies and make it available? I mean, are these...
No, the older that people like me get and die off or just, retire, the harder it's going to be to preserve this stuff. You've got to pick up the torch and carry it. And if you don't, it's going to be gone. You guys have to keep going. And there are a few of you out there, but I don't know if there's enough of you. The comic was not well received when it came out because we were in the middle of the Vietnam War and people's minds were other places, and Nixon had just become president and everything was in turmoil. The film came out. It was literally out 2 months and went away. 2 years later, it was on the CBS Thursday night movies, and that's where I saw it for the first time. I didn't see it in the theater. And it's on my list of top 5 movies of all time. It's that good.
Yeah, it's always like frustrating when you see something that you feel is truly great, and it's like, why didn't this find an audience?
Well, let me, and I'm not patting myself on the back because I didn't do this, but we met because of the documentary that C.J. Wallace did on us. Okay,
right.
You will agree that it's probably one of the best documentaries ever made.
It's a very good documentary.
Okay, well, you gave it 3.5 stars.
I gave it 4 stars.
4 stars
out of 5.
He raised it out of 5. Okay, all right. That movie deserved to be reviewed by The Hollywood Reporter and Daily Variety, and it should have had some coverage on Entertainment Tonight.
And it should have been in theaters.
And that's because of the pandemic. Let's set that aside. The point is, we got what we got out of it, knowing that that's all we were going to get. Again, you're in a very crowded marketplace where everybody's making films, everybody's making documentaries. And I've mentioned this on my own show. My dad thought this was going to turn around my career at 65, right? I'm going to get a network talk show. I'm going to be, his famous son. And I said, Dad, you don't know how the business works. Before this age of social media and TikTok and all this other crap that's out there, anybody with a webcam and a microphone can have a show, and it's diluting the whole industry for people like you and me that want to put out a quality thing. We're competing with, teenage girls in makeup tips. They get thousands of hits. They're not just a poster. They're a influencer. God, I hate that term. But they're the ones that are getting the deals for cosmetics and for all of this stuff, and they don't know what they're doing. You and I are trying to put out a quality product. I mean, I spent thousands on this TV studio so that when I do my show, it looks like a TV show you could see on NBC or something. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're the one-hit wonder. And I told my dad during this whole thing, I said, Dad, I've got a month of doing nothing but interviews. I mean, you and your wife are the only thing, the residual, that's maybe not the right word, to come from this. We became friends. I must have done 50 podcasts, okay? None of them were bigger than, I go to the website. You're the only one that was different. I go to the YouTube, 25, 30 hits on each of these things. And I spend hours with these people answering all their questions, giving them everything they want. And we get done. Oh, man, you're a great guest. Where's your show? We want to watch your show, blah, blah, blah. It took 16 years of doing my show to get the numbers that I'm getting now. And compared to a network show, I'm in the thousands. But beside the point, that's still a speck when you think about what else is out there. You're in the hundreds with these shows, right?
Yeah, I would say the hundreds.
Depending on the topic and the guests. It's the same problem I have. My point being, anybody with a microphone and a webcam can go out there. Nobody cares about the quality. It's how you can make money for somebody else. And these influencers and all of these people that do these schlocky shows are ruining it for people that are trying to do quality shows like us. I'm competing. I'm ABC and I'm competing with cable access. Cable access was never a threat in the old days. Now I'm competing with. Plus, the show that I do, Saluting Classic TV, only appeals to people my age with few exceptions. You kind of like some of the stuff I do. But my problem, on top of all of that, is the people my age that would appreciate the show that I do don't know how to use a damn computer. They can't push a button to get to the show. Even with a Roku TV, they still have to open the app and go to the right button to watch the show. And they can't do it. Now, I know plenty of people my age that are computer literate. Maybe not as much as I am. And I think I've grabbed them all because nobody in their 20s is going to watch my show, okay? Even after today, they're not going to watch my show.
No, but, you can come on our show once in a while and we can talk about
right, and
some
you
of
get
these
to make
things.
the money, so that's real good.
Well, if you want to put it that way, I don't, I mean.
No, I'm happy to help you.
You do,
I'm
you
just
provide the Jolly Ranchers.
That's right. I provide a lot more, but the point is, no, I want you to make money because you do a good show. Out of all the podcasts I did, there were maybe one or two. It's like, is there employment at CVS for you? Because this is not. Yet they get hits. And I work my ass off on these shows, preparing video clips and doing research and all this stuff because I want to put out a quality show. And I'm competing with these guys that turn on their webcams and sing rap songs for 3 minutes, and they get 1,000 hits, and I get 50. So,
Yeah, no, it's always frustrating when you spend a lot of time working on I'm speaking for me now. I'm working on a review. You carefully edit it, you put it together, and then someone who has a 15-minute blurb on it on TikTok gets millions of views.
It
more than me.
Makes no sense
Yeah.
unless they themselves are sitting there clicking on it
Yep.
to make it look like they're getting that many.
And even the whole concept of entertainment is changing. Nowadays, if there's a term I hate, or word really, it's content. No one makes movies or shows especially since movies and shows used to mean something. It's this is a show, so it's okay, so it's something you watch on TV. It's I'm making a movie, so it's something you go to the theater to see and stuff. And now, and I kind of blame Netflix for kind of getting this ball. It's it's content.
It's content because it's a generic word for movies, shorts, TV shows, episodic. It kind of encompasses the whole thing. But what it's done is it's genericized it, if that's a word, and made it all one lump thing.
Yep. Now, someone who worked on the James Bond movies when Amazon was announced to be buying MGM wrote a long letter, and I don't have it in front of me, but there was one line that always stood out to me, and he said one of the things that bothered him about this deal is he said, James Bond is not content. Now, this producer got jumped on by a lot of, talking heads and pundits saying, oh, yes, it is. James Bond is content. And I'm I don't think he's saying what you think he's saying. When he says James Bond is not content, what he's saying is James Bond is a legacy character with a rich history of being in the movies and having spectacle and laughs and thrills. And yeah, sometimes he goes to the moon and it's not that good, but when you lump him in as content,
that's what it is, though, in this day and age.
It's just
it's a lot quicker to say content than what you just said.
Yeah, but it kind of reduces it to just this disposable piece of entertainment.
Right. It puts it on the same level as the trash that we've been talking about. You're absolutely right. But this is the way it is. You're talking like me now. You're talking like a 65-year-old.
Oh gosh, and I'm only 37.
I know.
So, I'm starting to even side a little bit.
There's room on the park bench next to me if you want. So
I'm not quite that old yet, but so it's you have the James Bond producer point that out. Jerry Seinfeld, I think, one time said YouTube was the garbage pan of comedians. This is where all the failed comedians go because
I haven't even explored that end of YouTube, but I've quit dealing with them because you can never get them via email or on the phone if there's a problem. They've got these bot filters on there that if I say, hi, my name is Stu, well, we're taking this off because there's 5,000 other people named Stu. That's how bad it's gotten.
Oh, yeah.
Everything I do goes on Vimeo now. And the audience is 1/10 as much, but the bulk of my audience still watches on Wednesdays at a I do it the old-fashioned network style, okay? 4 o'clock California time every other Wednesday. You go to my channel, you get a show. And that's dying out. Now, you do shows when you want. You don't have a set schedule, right?
No, but I try to, at the very least, have a news video that I discuss on a daily basis if possible.
Well, that's a lot of work. A daily, I would be 6 feet under right now if I tried to do
the daily videos are like between 5 to 15 minutes.
But that still requires, I mean, I built a studio here when I moved up here last year full time. This is all brand new. I did this for the sake of the show because I want to put out a quality product. I have multiple cameras, as you see, around. Yep. I have the lights everywhere. I do a quality show. And I'm not going to put out something half-assed just to try to get hits on it, because it makes me look foolish. Most of the stuff that's out there is foolish crap. They don't spend the time on it. When you watch my show, it's like watching a television show. So, and I've seen your shows, and your shows have... great content on your shows. So
great content.
But that's the word for you, because you do it like me. You do a different topic every week, or we'll say great topics and not content, since we don't like that word. But
Right.
but that's it. The TikTokers and the people that just get up there and just jerk off, for 30 minutes, get enormous amounts of hits, and people like you and me that take a lot of pride and quality in their work, we're stuck in the hundreds or the low thousands. I have my core followers that are great. They support the show. I do make enough through Patreon each month to support what we're doing here. It pays for all this. But the second I start to lose followers, and the second I have to start digging into my own pocket to pay for this, it's over. And I've said that for 16 years, and I'm still on. So
well, I'm glad. But we're not the only ones who get frustrated by this whole new how people watch stuff. I remember like one story I read in like director James Cameron, Terminator and Aliens, great
Titanic,
great guy. Like, he made this little movie called Avatar. Maybe you've heard of it. I don't know if you've seen it, but you've probably heard of it.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard about
yes.
it.
Well, he spent a lot of money on it. He designed it for big, giant screens. He designed it with 3D in mind. He actually did something that hadn't happened since like the Stanley Kubrick days, where he would actually send projectionists, or theater owners, I should say, whatever way they were projecting it. Okay, make sure your settings are like this, because this is the best way to watch it. He really, whatever you think about that movie, he cares deeply about how you watch that movie. And he recalled how sick he felt when he saw a Samsung cell phone commercial and they were using Avatar to show off the phone. They had kids watching Avatar on a cell phone, and he felt sick.
That's what I said. You're in a different age now.
Yeah.
You're at the cusp of it.
I'm at the cusp.
It's 10 years younger than you. This is how people are seeing films right now. Now, what you're doing right now and what I do are fine on cell phones. Not the way I would want to look at it, because I have to wear glasses most of the time.
Well, let's admit it. What we're saying is more important than how we look right now.
Well, but I'm saying this type of forum would be fine on a phone or on an iPad.
That would be okay.
Because we're not doing a Fellini film here.
No, we're not.
But to see Avatar or something like that on a cell phone, are you kidding me? I'm right there with him.
Yeah, no, and it's so. This is going to be a very interesting future, and hopefully you can see as much of it as you can. I will probably see a little bit farther. I am very
30 years younger than me. You're going to see a lot farther.
A lot farther. But I'm starting to get a little, and this is why I still buy DVDs and Blu-rays, because I get nervous. Like, what happens when the Criterions are not profitable anymore? What happens when...
Well, that's happening. That's happening. There's less and less new releases coming out because everybody's lazy and they're watching it via streaming. And they're controlling it. That's the difference. If you want to control your own destiny with your own library, you want the tangible, physical property in your hands.
Yeah. And I really hate to say this to people. I actually don't hate to say this, because I kind of want people to be a little scared to understand the implications. But most of these studios would be perfectly willing to burn history if it'll save them $10.
Well, yeah, you think?
Yeah, there's a story. So let me look it up real quick, because I want to make sure that I have the right name on this movie.
If you need to use the restroom, do it now.
Yeah. But there was a River Phoenix's final movie, which it was called Dark Blood, and he died before he could finish it. And there was a lot of back and forth about like how can we finish it. The Phoenix family objected to it for some reason. Fans wanted to see River Phoenix's final performance. It kind of rivals the big debate really about The Day the Clown Died, where people want to see it, but the creative people are all snuck up. Well, at one point, I guess where it was being stored, the insurance company just didn't want to pay for it anymore, so they said, burn it. It's we're just going to get rid of it. And so someone with inside knowledge called the director and said, they're going to burn the film and it'll never get released. So, and this is what the director said. Like, he's like, I'm not going to say who's did it. I'm not going to say, even hint at who it was, but they helped me save it so that I could put it together in some form and get it out there. And when you stop and think about stories like that and how many...
Oh, this is common.
Yeah.
In the early days of TV, when the studios needed the storage space, into the Hudson River in New York, they dump it. That's how I got a lot of my films, is people picked them up and sold them through the collecting marketplace. I used to dumpster dive when the local channels in Los Angeles threw stuff out. And I got all kinds of I got cartoons, I got sitcoms. They'd get new prints. I didn't care. They were the old prints. They were all spliced up, but they were prints.
Yeah, but what happens when we get to that future where we don't have prints? They're keeping them on hard drives, and then they're like, wipe it clean, put something new, and then what?
We're on the way there, but we're not quite there yet. Yeah. Quentin Tarantino has the new Beverly Cinema, and he still shows 35 millimeter films in there.
Yep.
So he's a little younger than me, maybe 10 years. But we need people like you to get on the bandwagon here and make sure that this stuff gets preserved. You could make a name for yourself very easily in 20 years from now if you still believe in this stuff.
Oh, I will always believe in this. I believe in it so much. And this might get a little tensious for a moment, because I'm going to say something you might not agree with. I think John Wayne's The Alamo is a shit movie.
I was 8 when I saw the thing. I wasn't big in Westerns. I'm not high on John Wayne right now because it's coming out now. He's an old school guy, but he really treated people of color horribly and said some nasty things and stuff. And I never thought he was that great of an actor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, John Wayne was...
He was good in the I Love Lucy that he was in, but he was the straight man in there. He didn't really have to act.
John Wayne was good at being John Wayne.
That's it.
That's what it is. So So here's the thing. I don't think The Alamo is a good movie, but I read on the Digital Bits, which is actually run by one of my industry heroes, Bill Hunt. He's been doing a great job, in my opinion, of trying to push people to buy physical media, to get old films saved. And he broke the story one time that The Alamo is in dire needs of restoration. Like, we are going to lose this movie. And if we acted today, he mentioned a restorer by name whose name I forgot, but look, if we started today, I could maybe save the film at 60% of what it was originally.
Well, they've got computer and things that they can probably save it better than that, unless the elements are so gone that they have to reconstruct.
That's the thing. The elements are very, very...
And that movie is 50s. That wasn't that long ago.
1960.
60. Okay, I was close.
Yep. The only reason I know that is because one of my favorite movies, Psycho, did not get a Best Picture nomination because of The Alamo.
This guy's an adding machine for Oscar nominations.
Yeah. So, I wrote Oscar books. What can I say? Yeah, okay. But even though I do not think that's a very good movie, I think they've made much better movies about The Alamo. When I heard that, I personally wrote 12 letters to studio people at MGM begging them to preserve it. Because even though I don't think it's a very good movie, it is a John Wayne film. It was big for the time. It did get 10 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture.
Yeah, just because you and I didn't like it doesn't mean it's not worthy.
Right. So. My dad loves that movie. It's so why should this movie get lost just because the studio kind of forgot about it?
It's money. They're not going to pay unless they think there's an audience for it. Well, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, well, one of the frustrating aspects about this particular story is that the guy who wanted to restore it said, what if we did a Kickstarter thing? And I'm sure you know what Kickstarter is.
Of course. It's like Patreon, what I use for my show.
And this is one of the best uses for Kickstarter. There have been tons of producers and actors who go on Kickstarter and say, we want to restore this thing and we want to release it on Blu-ray, this is how much we need, and the film community comes together and they save it. And the guy said, why don't we do that for the Alamo? Because it's John stinking Wayne. We should be able to get the $5 million kickstarted to do this or whatever it was. And the MGM heads were like, we're not going to do that because we don't want to be seen as penny handlers. Or panhandlers, I should say. Where it's like, we're going out like
yeah, but if you raise the money and give it to them, what's the problem?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is,
Maybe they don't want to accept charity. I don't know.
I think the thing is, it's like, they don't want to look like they're so poor that they can't restore their own movies, but yet they have no interest in restoring a movie that is on the verge of being lost. I mean, is it
still available on DVD?
It is still available on DVD. However, the DVD that I saw, when I found it at the thrift store, it was
there's your answer right there. Remainder.
Well, there's a lot of movies. There's actually some I got a 4K disc of Gladiator at the thrift store for $5, so things just wind up at the thrift store.
Okay, all right.
But the DVD of the Alamo that I had got was a non-anamorphic transfer, which was like, oh, that's the worst in the world.
So it's like a TV print.
Yeah, it's like, so for those of you, because it's been so long since this was like a thing, I remember when DVDs first came out, there was like the big debate about, well, are we going to pay money to make the movie anamorphic or not? And what anamorphic means is if you have a widescreen TV, it'll
adapt.
It'll adapt. But if it's non-anamorphic and you have a widescreen TV, you have this little rectangle
in the center of
the TV. And the Alamo was a 70 millimeter CinemaScope film.
Okay.
And so
sometimes you can adjust the picture on the TV itself.
You can, but it looks so pixelated.
I know. It's zoomed in and it's out of focus. And,
it
looks like some of the films we saw in that documentary last night.
Yeah, when you do it like this is why people coined the term, well, it's better than nothing.
Well,
because it's such damning praise.
That's it.
I mean, I am just worried about film preservation right now. I think we are on the cusp of losing things. And I know this is not exactly a news story, but as long as like the prints were out there would be someone like you, some little kid who was hired to arrange everything. And when someone says, oh, why don't you throw these away because we don't need them anymore? He goes like, well, they're going in my closet if you don't want them anymore. And they survive somehow, but when it's all on a hard drive, when it's all in the cloud,
there's too many things that can go wrong and wipe them out, and all they're going to do is give you a refund.
Yep. Well, let's go back to Toy Story 2 for a second on that level, because this is a very famous story on just the perils of digital. So when they were making Toy Story 2, because Toy Story 2 was made on computers. Now that I'm not derating them for them. I'm not chiding them for that. That's how the movies are made.
The show is being recorded on a computer now.
Yeah, it's being recorded. I mean, sometimes, it's a tool it used, and Toy Story is a computer animation movie. Well, this guy was supposed to delete an extra file or two on the computer, and he ended up accidentally deleting the whole movie.
That's why you make backups.
Yeah, no, this is a true story, and they flipped out, and they were they were like calling everyone like, who has it, and no one was thinking to back it up. But then one person who was homesick for the week made a copy of the movie so he could continue working on it while he was at home sick. He was the only one that had the copy of the movie.
And a copy, that's the beauty of digital. Copy is a clone, so it's exactly the same.
Right. But if he didn't, you can't accidentally delete.
What, you think the guy did it on purpose?
No, he didn't. It was a total accident. And
then you just contradicted what you said. The guy didn't know what he was doing and wiped the whole thing out.
Yeah.
Well, you said you can't just delete a film. You can if you're an idiot.
No. Like when I talk about film, like
film. Oh, you're talking about tangible film, not a digital.
Yeah.
Right. The only way you can get rid of film is either toss it, burn it, or shred it.
But like. Can you imagine me, the guy in the office at MGM that day, like with Gone with the Wind? Like, what happened? Oh, I accidentally deleted the film while there's like a big fire there.
Well, there've been problems where before they had the video assist, they'd shoot a film and you get it back from the lab and it's got a hair in the screen. There's stuff like that.
Right.
That happened a lot.
Right, but you don't accidentally delete a physical film product.
Right. Okay, I didn't understand quite what you were getting
at.
But
I was
now
getting
okay, right. I've still got vinegarized films in there that I refuse to throw away because, they're my babies, but I can't run them. If I try to thread them, they'd crumble in the film gate.
Right.
So fortunately, not that many.
Yeah,
Out of 1,500, there's maybe 20 or 30. I got very lucky because I thought in my move I was going to have to throw a lot of stuff out. I threw some stuff out, but even the ones that were vinegar that I can't play, they're Beanie and Cecil cartoons or I Love Lucy's or something that are irreplaceable. And, I keep them in the cans so they don't smell. But, man, you take the lid off that can, woo, baby. Yeah,
Yep, I've smelled it. That sounds so naughty, but I smelled it. So
just don't use that out of context.
Don't use. Okay. Oh, someone probably will. But that's just the nature of the internet. They can take anything out of context. I found out. So yeah, that's why I still buy physical copies, and I like to have them. Of course, now there's like a bigger question coming up, and maybe this is something you and I can kind of hammer out together, or maybe not. Not all of the world's problems can be fixed in one day, because you've got a pretty massive collection, and I've got a pretty massive collection. Over 5,000 discs, which we have various means of restoring, and it's like, preserving history is great, but when are we preserving history, and when is it just insanity?
I think hoarding is insanity. I had to think about that for a second. But what you and I are doing are preserving history. I'm not a hoarder. I mean, you talk to Janine, she might have a different opinion on some stuff.
Right.
But that closet to your right there is filled with TV guides from the 50s and 60s that I use for research. That's not hoarding. That I refer to those all the time. All the films and tapes in there, there's a reason that I recorded them off the air, and they go back to the mid-'70s. And there's a reason why I collected those films. I'm preserving this stuff, and I like this stuff, and I want to keep it. As long as I'm on this planet, it will stay with me. Now, somebody else could come in who has no idea of what we're doing and why we're doing it, look at it and say, look at this. This all should be thrown away. Look at all the spaces. It's all subjective, okay? Right. You and I and probably the bulk of the people watching us right now are heavily into this. And some of it may be a little bit obsessive, but the whole point is you want to have a collection. I want to have a collection. You're more into film than I am. I'm more into television than you. We all have our personal choices, but I've shared my archives with hundreds and hundreds of people. People call me when they need clips. Back in the 80s, I supplied film clips to Entertainment Tonight all the time because they could come to me and get it right away, where if they went to a studio, it would take them, there'd be a charge to access it, there'd be a charge to transfer it, and there'd be a waiting period. And with Entertainment Tonight, in those days, at least when they were doing news and not fluff, they needed the stuff that day. And I got to charge them a rush charge for it. I didn't if they needed the next day, and they'd send a runner out to pick it up from me. And I was making money hand over fist because it was quicker to come to me. It was cheaper because they had to indemnify me if there were copyright issues. They would do all the clearances themselves, and since they were technically news, there wasn't much to clear. They just were at a limit of 60 seconds. But they could get the stuff from me right away rather than go to the studios. And I was no threat to the studios. They never said, hey, you can't do that. They just didn't want to be bothered with a lot of that stuff. And when they did, I was charging $500 and they were charging $4,000. There's a big, and they'd get it right away.
Right.
So it wasn't a competition because it was old stuff that they didn't care about anyway. So share the wealth.
Yeah.
All right. In answer to that, the long answer to your short question, I'm a preservationist, not a hoarder.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. I like to think of myself that way too. Like my wife sometimes asks, so why do we have 2 copies of Beauty and the Beast? And it's like, well, this one has the 4K transfer, so it looks better, but it doesn't have many of the special features from this one.
There you go. There's a reason to double dip, as they say. I think it's ridiculous of the studios to do that.
Right.
Buy this film again and you'll get a 5-minute featurette on the guy who blew his nose off set. Well, people want that, For me, it gets to a point, when the Looney Tunes, here's something close to you.
Yes.
When the Golden Collections came out in the early aughts, I bought them all as they came out. Then Jerry Beck was on my show and said, we're going to start re-releasing some of these in Blu-ray. Well, they look perfectly fine to me in DVD. Now, somebody like you, see, I love cartoons too, but not to the point where I was going to double dip those until they went into remainder. When they dropped from $70 a set down to $20, well, yeah, I'll spend $20 to get them in a little bit better quality. I have 65-year-old eyes, so I don't see the difference as much as you do, okay?
Right.
Certain things I waited until the Flintstones on Blu-ray ran into remainder before I bought them. They did a sloppy job on those. They don't have the proper end credits on a lot of them. They did the Turner bit where they stripped them out and put the generic stuff in. They did the same thing on the Blu-ray. If I'm paying for Blu-ray, somebody should have gone in there. Earl Kress used to do all those for Warner Brothers. He's no longer with us. Jerry's expertise, he knows a lot about Hanna-Barbera, but his expertise are with the Looney Tunes. Mm-hmm. He knows those things backwards and forwards. If they had called me and had me supervise, I would have made sure the original end titles were put on all of those episodes. But again, they'd have to pay me, and they'd have to go dig them out and find them. And if and I have 16 millimeter prints on all of them for reference, so we could find the proper end title. They don't want to pay because they don't think the audience is going to be big enough. I was very disappointed with that Blu-ray set, and I was glad I didn't pay $70 for it. I paid like $22 when it went into remainder.
Yeah, although therein lies like one of the dilemmas.
And that's the problem. When you're paying money for Blu-ray, you want it to be right.
Yeah, but also when you deliberately wait for them to be $20, that kind of says to the studios that they're not. I'm not blaming you or anything.
No.
I want to.
But you got to understand, I've got original 16 millimeter
Right.
network prints on these with commercials, and I've got the DVDs when they came out, so I could get the better quality. I don't need them in Blu-ray, especially if one of them was cut, one of them was a 22-minute show. No excuse for that, and I want to see the end credits as they originally were, and. They were in a hurry to crank that set out, and it was the home video division there, not George Feltenstein in the archives. If George had done it, it would have been done right.
Right. Well,
Jerry would have gotten me involved.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing about some of these archiving Blu-ray projects is I'm hearing more and more that they hand it off to the division, but they don't get the archivists or the real people who love this stuff involved.
Right. And Jerry does his best with those cartoons when they're put out, but he's not there every minute, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And some of these people, when they get the cartoons and they see one speck of dust on one frame of a droopy cartoon, they have an orgasm over it, and then they badmouth Jerry all over the internet, on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, and then they wonder why this stuff doesn't come out anymore.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Right.
They're the reason. They are the reason. The Tom and Jerry Golden Collection, #2. They had to pull those 2 cartoons because of the woke crap that's going on. Well, the word got out that those 2 cartoons weren't going to be on, and so 48 other cartoons or whatever was going to be on that set in Blu-ray had to suffer because these people, have to have, Tom making fun of black people on these cartoons. They have to have them out, and that's why this stuff is not coming out. Yeah. And then they blame Jerry. And without Jerry, they'd have none of it.
Oh, no, Jerry.
None of it.
No, Jerry has done more to preserve these cartoons than almost any other person I can think of.
And he takes more abuse from it than he should have to.
Oh, he shouldn't be taking really any abuse.
Exactly.
For that.
Exactly.
I mean, sometimes there's like a legitimate, and I'm not saying it's Jerry's fault, but
Porky Pig 101, he's still getting complaints on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, look, sometimes you'll have to take in mind, look, sometimes these cartoons are so old, they're only going to look so good. Sometimes we've lost certain elements, sometimes whatever. Like, if there's like a speck of dust on it, as they say, there's real things to worry about.
Well, and then the other issue they have is sometimes the DVNR goes a little too much and erases some of the lines along the characters and stuff. I can see them getting upset with that. If you're paying money for a Blu-ray, you don't want your characters erased.
Right.
But again, he's not supervising every second of every cartoon. He can't. He's working on several different projects. He and George do the best they can. I think George is back working over there now. They laid him off during the pandemic, but I think he's back there.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know what's coming or not over there because the sales down the toilet.
Right.
Because of the cloud.
Yeah. Well, for the record, and I do buy the Blu-rays. I did have to go through that stupid replacement disc program with the Flintstones because they messed up the audio on that.
Yeah, no. But you know what? Save that because that's rare. That's you've got a Flintstones with no effects or music. You've got the talking track there. My set I bought later on, so mine had the corrected disc in it. But save that, save that disc because that's an anomaly. That's an oddity that no one's going to have now because they went back and fixed it. But to me as a collector, that would be worth having. But I'd still want a replacement for it.
yeah.
What you got? Same thing with when they finally released the Adam West Batman. There was a problem with one of the episodes, and you got a replacement disc for it. And they were sending replacement discs to people who didn't even buy the set. People were getting one disc of Batman for free because they weren't checking. All you had to do was email, and you'd get on a list, and they'd send the disc. Whether you didn't have to do proof of purchase on it. That's how stupid they are.
I think with the Flintstones, I think I just had to show like a picture of the DVD, but of course anyone could just grab a picture of the Blu-ray on the internet, and then they'd send you a replacement.
Yeah. Well, mine came with the replaced disc in it. I felt like emailing them and said, "Can I have one of the defective ones just so I have it without?" Because I've got Flintstones in the archives from other languages, where all the M&Es are missing and all of that too. It's just the dialogue, because in other countries they don't know the difference. So anyway.
But I do buy. I try to buy these when I can, because it's like, I want to support cartoon restoration, and cartoon restoration, is expensive if done correctly and properly.
And that's the bottom line. Are they gonna make the money back they spent doing the restorations?
It's kind of tough. I mean, because the Looney Tunes are kind of in an interesting scenario, because I think they're one of the few old time cartoons where I do get the sense that kids do still watch them. Now that might partially be because they do make new Looney Tune cartoons, and kids, that's one of the few areas where I've noticed that kids if they fall in love with the new stuff, and when they run out of that, they start going to the old stuff. And it's just as good, and in many cases better.
Oh, it's always better. So they've come pretty close with some of the Looney Tunes they've done in the last few years. But the Bugs and what was the thing they did where they had Bugs and Daffy? It was like a sitcom where they're trying to be
the Looney Tunes show.
Yeah, that was awful.
So I do like that show, but I like but it's a different kind of Looney Tunes
Bugs
show.
Bunny doesn't sound like Bugs Bunny. Again, it's the directors they bring in and the way, because all of those guys are talented enough that they could sound like Mel.
I do agree that it's like not. It's not Looney Tunes the way you typically think of it, but
it was Looney Tunes as portrayed by Seinfeld, is the way I call that show.
Yeah, no, well, right, but I will say one of the reasons I like the Looney Tunes shows is because they actually fixed Lola Bunny. She was really funny in the Looney Tunes show, where in Space Jam she's just kind of I mean
I'm not a big Kristen Wiig fan, so
I think
neither is Janine.
I thought she was a great Lola Bunny in my opinion, but the bottom line is, like, if you don't like it, that's fine. There's other Looney Tunes stuff available.
Right. Well, I'm an old fart and I'm a purist, and I don't screw with the original. If it works, don't fix it. And all of the reincarnations of the Flintstones since the original series, I blame Hanna-Barbera for most of those from the 70s and 80s. They're god awful. They're horribly animated. They're horribly written. And then once Warner's got a hold of it, they wrecked it even more. Thank God Jeff Bergman is back in there, because he's doing the Alan Reed version of Fred. I never liked the Henry Corden version, and that's no slam against him. He's a good actor and a very nice man, but I'm used to hearing Alan Reed and not Jackie Gleason doing Fred. And Henry Corden sounds like Jackie Gleason. So
since we're talking about the Flintstones, I have always wondered, and I kind of want to get your 2 cents on this, because you're a Family Guy fan, or at least,
I wasn't till the last 10 years.
Yeah, but the original show, basically when Seth MacFarlane was working on it, you liked the show.
From about 2005 to 2010, I thought it was a really good show. Yeah. Ever since then, it's been shit.
Yeah, because Seth MacFarlane was actually tasked to reboot the Flintstones, and he was going to.
Thank God that didn't happen. He's not the guy to do it because of the fart humor and the stuff that he does on Family Guy.
Yeah, but the interesting thing that I hear about that is, like, one of the reasons it didn't go through is because MacFarlane, because he said that his first cartoon character he ever drew was Fred Flintstone. Okay. So he really loves the Flintstones. And he delivered a pilot that was very much like the original show. In fact, it was pretty much a G-rated show. And
I would love to see that.
And apparently the Fox executives, they didn't want that. They wanted Family Guy version.
Yeah. And that would have... Did you see Flintstones on the Rocks? Do you know what that is? It was a 2001 cartoon.
By John Kricfalusi.
No, he did Yogi Bear.
He did the Yogi Bear one.
Which was awful.
Yeah,
just
that was awful. But On the Rocks, that was where Wilma and Fred were arguing the whole time,
They had a Dr. Ruth character. Yeah, they were yelling and screaming. And Jeff Bergman did Alan Reed. The only redeeming thing of that, because it was weird, it goes into this 3D, stop-action animation thing in the middle of it for no reason. He has a weird dream and all that. But they've got Fred farting and flushing the toilet and stuff like that in there, and swearing. And
Yes.
they're trying to
I've
bring
seen
it into
it.
the 21st century, but
Yeah,
yeah.
but
It's an acquired taste. The first time I watched it, I was in shock. Second time I watched it, I said, well, at least they're using the Hort Curtain underscore, so it has a little feel of the original. But he's mean to Dino in it. He smacks Dino and ties him up and leaves him in the yard while they leave. It's almost bordering on blasphemy. And they make the characters with really big noses. And Barney is the early Mel Blanc from season 1.
Right.
Because they found some actor that could do that version of Barney. And in all the subsequent ones, even with Pebbles and Bam Bam that Warner's has done, they're using that higher nasally Barney voice instead of the one that did the majority of the shows. And that came about because, Mel Blanc had the accident.
Right.
And he couldn't do the voice. He couldn't get up that high again to do that voice.
Right. But I've always wondered, especially knowing that Seth MacFarlane was aiming for a more family-friendly version of the Flintstones. And, he got his start writing cartoons on Cartoon Network, so we know he can make funny stuff that is within the PG or lower range. But I kind of wonder, what would that have looked like?
Well, maybe somebody's got a copy of the pilot. I didn't even know it went that far.
Well, no, he wrote the script.
Okay, so it wasn't animated.
He turned it in, and they wanted him to punch it up with dirtier jokes.
Well, they wanted him to be Peter Griffin, probably, and
Probably.
with belching and naked running around and,
Right, and he apparently wasn't interested. Now they are.
Well, I got to give him kudos for that.
Yeah. Now they have commissioned Elizabeth Banks to reboot the Flintstones called Bedrock, and it's going to take place with like Pebbles and Bam Bam being adults. And she said something. It's like, yep, it's going to be a Flintstones for the adult crowd. And I said, well, I guess there's going to be a lot of rock sex jokes.
Yeah.
And there are some things like, I don't mind if you want to go a little bit edgier when you. I don't mind having different versions of things, but sometimes it's like, if you're really going to go that far, the first thing you really need to ask yourself is, why are you going that far? Do you think you can come up with an interesting angle by going that far?
Because just doing it for doing it is not a reason.
Yeah, because if you're just going to do it to do it that way.
Let's go back to the Looney Tunes, and when Elmer's chasing Bugs Bunny, half the time, at least once in the cartoon, there'll be a gag where Bugs ends up kissing Elmer on the lips.
Right.
Okay? Now, there's something funny about that. Back in those days, you couldn't do, I don't know if you call it gay humor, or he's just a crazy rabbit, but when a push comes to shove, one of my friends used to say, he's a rabbit with with homosexual tendencies. And he, when you think about that, he's right, but I don't think anybody saw it that way back then. He was just a screwball rabbit that was outfoxing Elmer every time he could.
He was really taunting Elmer with that kiss, making him
it's like, I hate you, but yet you're a sweetheart.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, we could do a whole thing on that. Again, I don't like dissecting these things. Bottom line, they were just trying to be funny with these things. There's no underlying theme to these. Oh, were these the first homosexual cartoons? No, they're just trying to be funny.
Yeah, just funny, just making gags. It's funny, the new Looney Tunes cartoons on HBO Max, which are very funny in my opinion.
I think I've seen a few of them. They're okay. They're all different lengths, though.
Yeah, they are, but they are very close. Like, the one change that I thought was really strange, and I kind of laughed because it's like it was one of those woke gone wrong, but also the replacement, I don't think, solved the problem that they had. Elmer Fudd could no longer use his gun, so they gave him like a scythe,
That's too far. I mean, the Three Stooges are still on TV, poking eyes and falling down and all of that stuff. And that's okay. Where they're going to start putting black when Mo pokes somebody's eyes so you can't see him poke the eyes. There's a limit to that. This whole woke, don't even get me started on that.
Yeah, so the Three Stooges movie, to address that, because I mean, I thought it was, I've never seen this in a movie before, but I think because they were selling it to families, they had actors playing the Farrelly brothers, showing the kids how the visual gags worked at the end and basically telling kids not to do it. Because unlike chasing a rabbit around with like a barrel gun, poking each other in the eyes is obviously something that's very easy to imitate. And I don't know how I feel about those things. Because well, look, if that's what it takes to make sure the stuff isn't buried, fine. But it also seems like, shouldn't it be easy for parents to just say, don't do that.
Well, yeah, and when I was a kid, I saw the Three Stooges, and I thought they were funny, and I knew not to do that as a kid. You got to give kids some credit.
Yeah, well, I think me and my brother tried it once, and it hurt. It's like, ow,
Well,
ow,
yeah,
and then we never wanted to do it again.
Exactly, if that's what it took. But yeah, I mean, and disclaimers now before they run movies like Blazing Saddles. We're not making fun of black people here, so don't take it the wrong.
I think that's obvious when you watch 10 minutes of the movie.
Well, yes, it's the white people that are stupid in it, and that was Mel Brooks' whole point. And if people don't get that, they shouldn't be watching the film in the first place because they wouldn't get the humor. That's where I think they draw the line. And then I've had arguments with people, well, it's better they put the disclaimer than not show it at all. They don't need the disclaimer. My point is they don't need it. If a push comes to shove and it's like we put the disclaimer or there's no film, okay. But to put the disclaimer just rubs salt in the wound, I think.
I've learned to just accept that one. It's like, I think the Blazing Saddle one is especially weird because, again, if you watch it for 10 minutes, you can figure out...
You realize the white people are morons.
Right, and you know what Mel Brooks is doing. And then, of course, if you actually watch the whole thing, it's so obvious this is not a racist movie.
No, Cleavon Little saves the day for that whole town in there. Him and Gene Wilder saved that town. Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's like when Norman Lear was doing the shows in the 70s, the Jeffersons, the white guy married to the black woman was an idiot. Okay? Again, it's a black show. Good Times. Anytime there was an authority figure on Good Times that was white, they were an idiot. A cop, a bank teller, whatever. They were all idiots. Sanford and Son, same thing. The whites are all idiots. They were trying to make a point there. It wasn't offensive to me. No. It was funny.
Yeah.
It's funny,
because
people are too damn sensitive.
Yeah, because if attitudes at the time, it's like, people were being really dumb.
Right.
And people who have those attitudes today are still dumb.
Right.
I want to point out.
And then you have a show like Three's Company, which is the biggest piece of diarrhea to ever hit the air. It was incredibly popular.
Was that John Ritter?
Yeah, the three of them.
Oh, that's one of the worst things I've ever seen.
That's right. Three white idiots in that show. And you never knew who was going to be dumber each week. That was the most inconsistent show. Was it going to be the brunette that was the dumb one this week? Or was it going to be Chrissy, the blonde? Or even John Ritter could be an idiot. How could they, that's why I just didn't understand that show. What sold that show for so long was the sex, all the double entendres, the Ropers not having sex ever. And did you ever notice that the Ropers was just the Kravitzes from Bewitched with no sex life? Have you noticed the similarities between Gladys and Abner Kravitz on Bewitched and the Ropers on Three's Company? It was the same thing.
I frankly I think I didn't, only because I spent too much time watching what little of it I did, going like, this is so not funny.
That was the moron era of ABC when Fred Silverman came in there, and that's when you got Laverne and Shirley, which I loved the women on there, but the shows were stupid. Okay, you had Welcome Back, Kotter, which was one of the stupidest shows ever on the air, and the worst of them all was Three's Company.
Yeah.
So...
Yep, that Carter show couldn't even teach John Travolta math.
Yeah.
So no, I guess that was probably not a very good era of television.
No, you had some quality shows in the late 70s there. They were still on CBS. You still had One Day at a Time, and you had All in the Family. And on ABC, you had Barney Miller, and you had decent shows on there. Yep. But the moron shows were the ones that were getting all the ratings. That was dumbing down of America started back then.
So the saddest thing about Three's Company, maybe the most offensive thing, is like not only that it was just one of the most unfunniest things you could watch ever, but the fact that they like dragged Don Rickles down with them at one point. Like that's like probably like the worst thing you can do when you can see like a legendary actor in something.
You mean John Ritter, not Don Rickles?
No, not Don Rick. No, Don Knotts.
Don Knotts.
Sorry, wrong Don. But it's like, it's like, oh, great comedian from the Andy Griffith Show. He could make. Well, at least you thought he could make the most unfunniest things in the world funny, and then you put him on that show, and you realize just how dirty they can do him.
Well, they had to do something because they tried to spin the Ropers off into their own show, and you can only do non-sex jokes, not having sex for months and months, so long before it gets tedious, and they just weren't a lead. They did not. It would be like spinning off Abner and Gladys Kravitz from Bewitched. It's a one-joke thing. Stanley, you're not getting it on with me. How much of that can you take before it gets ridiculous. The show lasted a season and a half. It put them out of work. Brought Don Knotts in, and he had to play a bad guy. An oversexed bad guy. Had to be the opposite of the Ritters, of the Ropers, rather, to keep the show going. And by that point, the show was unwatchable from the beginning. It just, I couldn't get through. The first season was 4 episodes. And by that 4th episode, I was done. It was just awful. Just terrible.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, no. That's actually why when some people say, like, oh, The Big Bang Theory is the worst show I've ever seen, I'm like, oh, hold on. Have you seen Three's Company?
Yeah.
It could always be worse.
Big Bang Theory at least had jokes in it
Right.
that were funny. But, yeah, I mean, that show was on, 13 years? I forgot.
Right, and after 13 years, it's always going to get a little
Well,
stale.
it was always the same thing. It was the same thing. Sheldon is weird, and the girl across the hall marries the, Janine loves the show. She still watches it on, and the sound of it, the cadence of it, the audience that's there, you can tell that they filmed each scene 100 times, and the scene that they're showing to the public is the last take, because the audience energy level always sounds like they're in the next room. If you go on YouTube, somebody went and took out the audience laughter on one of the shows and just showed it without the audience, and it is flat and dull and unfunny without that laugh track it's a live audience, but without that laugh track, the pacing is off. It's just,
they did that for Seinfeld too, and it had a very similar effect where, except for Jerry Seinfeld and Kramer, like, most of the actors were not eliciting a whole lot of laughs from their jokes.
Yeah, but just imagine, like, going to a filming of Seinfeld, because you're talking about scenes that are 30 seconds long,
Right.
and when you have to do them 4 or 5 times until the network and the producers are happy with them, how unfunny and how hard that... When my last few years of audience warm-ups, before they kind of retired me because my hair started to turn color, that's how it was. 5-6 hours to do a 20-minute show. They just do scenes over and over and over again. It became no fun. After the first hour, it's like people are screaming to get out of there. And that's, the pandemic shut all that down. I don't think you're ever going to see that again. You're going to see very few shows with audiences now, because they learned how to do it without them and just use the fake laughs. Nobody cares.
Right, right. Which they used to make shows with fake laughs too, so it's kind of funny how that came.
Yeah, full
back.
Circle. They're back doing that now.
And then I think they went to live audiences because they wanted to actually use a live audience to determine whether or not it was really as funny as they thought it was.
Norman Lear brought that back, that's when shows started to be shot on tape instead of film, and because Norman Lear wanted that Broadway look, because that's where most of his actors came, was from Broadway. Who knew who Beatrice Arthur was until she did Maude?
Yeah.
Carol O'Connor was a stage and a screen actor, but nobody knew who he was. Gene Stapleton, they all worked, but he made them all stars.
Mm-hmm.
So
fun fact: B. Arthur was in the Star Wars Holiday Special.
I seem to recall that. Again, Star Wars. I didn't watch it.
Yeah, that's if no other reason, I'm happy that happened, just because it forces nerds to actually look up who B. Arthur was.
Yeah. And then back in the Boondocks for her after that. Okay, she's in Star Wars, nothing else, But anyway.
Yeah. Well, no. I actually know a lot of people who are younger than me who do like the Golden Girls.
Oh yeah, that's got a whole resurgence there because it's insult humor and it's funny.
Yeah.
And if we had done our Lucy show that way in the 80s, we may have had a fighting chance, but they were pushing the slapstick, typical Lucy stuff, and at 75, getting a pie in the face isn't as funny as it is when you're 40.
Right.
People were gasping in the audience. She okay? She all right? We hit Gail with a ladder, and people were Gail Gordon. We were people in the audience were like, oh God, how can you do that to a guy who's 80 years old?
It's like they're comedians. Like they have.
Yeah. But again, it's the wrong type of humor and the wrong time of our culture to do the stuff that they did when they were young. It would be like Laurel and Hardy at my age poking each other, or the Three Stooges. They overstayed their welcome a little bit too long.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, they couldn't get a third Stooge to after Shemp died that was any good. Joe Besser was all right, but when they brought in Joe DeRita, first of all, I don't know if this had anything to do with it. He was the only one that wasn't Jewish, and secondly, he was just slow and terribly unfunny. And they tried to make him do what Curly did because he kind of looked like Curly, but those are the worst of all of them. Those feature films that they did, they made more money off those feature films than in the 24 years they did those shorts at Columbia. Because Moe's son-in-law was produced those things and got them thousands and thousands of dollars. They had never made that kind of money, and unfortunately, those are the worst films they ever made. So
yeah, well,
because they're slow and the guys are old, and it's just the show, they were not well written.
It's kind of an open secret in Hollywood that you do the stuff that you don't like to do, and the stuff that's terrible is the stuff that's usually going to pay you the most money.
Well, yeah, and they've done everything by that point. You're talking about 15 years in vaudeville and 30 years doing shorts, and then while they're like my age trying to do the stuff that they did back then, it wouldn't work.
Right.
It just wouldn't work. So.
Now, in terms of the current culture, and we're talking about preservation, everything, I am cautiously optimistic because I've seen these things tend to come in waves. I'm old enough to remember vaguely in the early 90s when it wasn't the liberals this time, it was like the fundamentalist Christians who wanted to like start censoring things and putting things in a box, and then there was a generation that said, no, we got to preserve it, we got to just contextualize it. And then I lived through a period where everyone wanted to, like, we don't want to be censored, let's not censor our history. And now we're kind of in that phase again where we want to censor everything and put it all back in the box. I think we will come to a point where someone's going to want to put the wrong thing back in the box and pretend it never happened, and it's going to be a big enough deal that there will be a group of people who said, no, we don't do that. In fact, we really shouldn't be doing it at all. We should be preserving this
It's
stuff.
going to have to be something big like Gone with the Wind because of the slavery issue or something like that in there, and it's going to take black people to stand up and say, look, enough of this. It's part of our culture. It's not going to happen with the Censored 11 if you're thinking that with Warner Brothers cartoons. It's got to be something huge for a stupid reason. Like Mary Poppins is going to be banned because it makes fun of chimney sweeps. It's going to be something stupid like that.
Which has kind of been brought up. Some people actually have brought up that Mary Poppins might be a little insensitive because they've got chimney sweeping kids, and that was kind of a bad profession in real life.
Well, it's going to take something stupid like that for somebody to come down and say enough. And until that happens, the Wizard of Oz for being mean to witches, I don't know. It's it's going to be something. It's got to be something stupid like that where the public is finally going to say, okay, that's it, you're done. And I don't know what that is. Until then, entitlement and millennials are going to be the problem that we're going to put up. You just missed being a millennial.
Yeah.
You realize that.
We got pretty darn close to having that situation, ironically, with the Golden Girls. Because Hulu, to be racially sensitive, removed an episode of the Gilmore Girls where they went to like a bed and spa place and they put that, that cream stuff that women like to put on their face. No, wait,
you said Gilmore, you mean Golden Girls.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, and then she looked like Al Jolson did in The Jazz Singer.
Well, that's what they say, but it's just facial cream.
Have you seen the episode? The black ladies walk in and they're not offended at all. They're like, oh my goodness. And it again, made a big deal of it. I have the episode.
Yeah, but that episode was the first time where I saw like the public really like stop and say, are we maybe not going just a little too far here? Maybe we're overthinking this just a little bit.
There was talk about editing all the I Love Lucy's where they're smoking to not show kids that people can smoke.
That has been an argument that has come up time and time again with everything, unfortunately, because although it's such common knowledge now that cigarettes are bad, but I think we have a group of parents that's like, I think ironically the group of parents want to show these old things to their kids and things like that, but they don't want to see kids seeing some characters that smoke and makes smoking look like it's cool. So it's like, well, can't you just take the smoking out of it? And I know for a while Disney, for like a lot of their old movies, they had actually started taking cigarette smoking out of some of them, like for Melody Time and Saludos Amigos and the Three Caballeros. They were starting to like take out cigars and cigarettes. Now, thankfully, they have backtracked, and what they do now, and I know
they put a disclaimer at the beginning.
Yeah, and I will accept that if it'll make it uncut. They actually have a pretty good disclaimer, although I have to laugh that they do it for Pinocchio, because the anti-smoking disclaimer for Pinocchio is Pinocchio.
That's right.
Have you ever looked at a kid who watches Pinocchio smoking and getting all watery-eyed and they're turning a donkey? Kids are horrified. That's like the biggest anti-smoking.
That scared the hell out of me when I was a kid and I saw that for the first time in the theater and those kids turned into donkeys. I had nightmares.
And
Disney
terrified.
did that with every one of his films. Snow White, the Wicked Queen, scared the hell out of me. Bambi, when he loses, he or she, I keep remembering what it is because Bambi is a girl's name, but I think he was
it's a he.
It's a he. Loses his mother in the fire. You either cry like hell at those movies or you're scared to death.
Yeah.
And I don't see anybody coming down on that. And ironically, have you seen the trailer for the new Pinocchio? All he wants is human flesh. That's how they're selling the new Pinocchio. What does that sound like to you? Sounds like a vampire movie. I want to suck your blood.
Well, we've got 2 new Pinocchio movies.
When there's a
coming
Winnie
out.
the Pooh terror movie coming out.
Well, that's because of the public domain thing, and someone said, "Let's make a Winnie the Pooh."
Yeah. Jerry Beck's on my show in August, and those are 2 topics of contention. When we're on there. Why? How about the live action Dumbo they did? What a piece of crap that was.
I don't even know why they hired Tim Burton to do that, because it didn't seem like his sensibilities.
I just think he's a nut out of control. Janine loves him. Janine thinks he's a genius. I think he's a nut.
I love Tim Burton.
Well, you and Janine can have fun conversations together.
But I did not like Dumbo, his Dumbo. Yeah. Dumbo, fun fact, Dumbo was
Did you like his Alice in Wonderland? That was another strange thing. He's smoking something when he's shooting these things.
Little bit more mixed reaction to that one. I don't love it, but I have to be honest, it's definitely his version of Alice in Wonderland. And also, here's why I gave it a positive review, a very, very small positive review.
You don't have to make
3
excuses
stars.
to me. That's all right.
It was the only Alice in Wonderland movie I've seen that had a somewhat coherent story, because I don't even like the Disney Alice in Wonderland.
No, it's all over the place.
Yeah,
You're right about it. There's like 14 different stories in it.
Yeah.
There's the Mad Tea Party. There's the thing where she drinks the thing. Then there's the whole thing at the end with the Queen. It's all ridiculous.
Yeah, me and my wife are doing like a Disney animated movie marathon, so we recently rewatched Alice in Wonderland, and I think more than a couple times, me and her would just kind of look at each other like, this is definitely something. It's a very bizarre thing. So I will give Tim Burton credit, at least his Alice in Wonderland. It's like, hey, there's a story I can follow. So that puts it a little bit above most of it. But, there's 2 different Pinocchios coming out. One by Disney, and Robert Zemeckis is directing it. And one...
Well, that's the one he only wants human flesh, I thought, isn't it?
And there's one coming out on Netflix by Guillermo del Toro.
Well, that one... Isn't that the Popeye guy? The Popeye thing that he was supposed to do never came out?
No. Guillermo del Toro is the horror film director. He did like Pan's Labyrinth and The Shape of Water. That movie won Best Picture a couple of years ago. So he's... I wouldn't be surprised if that is the version that you saw.
Because I saw the trailer. I saw the trailer. Jiminy Cricket looks like one of those slimy Rob Bottin special effect creatures.
Yeah. So you're thinking about the Del Toro movie that's going to come out on Netflix.
Well, I saw the Disney version. It's CGI, right? With Tom Hanks.
Yeah, that's
the trailer I saw. I wasn't impressed by it.
Well, I wasn't terribly impressed by that one either. Although maybe they're not very impressed because they're sending it straight to Disney Plus.
Well, that seems to be the norm since the pandemic. But aren't they charging like $30 on Disney Plus to see some of these things?
Not for that one.
What about for Chip and Dale? I haven't seen. Okay, Jerry wants me to see that before he does the show because he says there's a lot of homage to Hollywood in it. He thinks I will like.
So yeah, so I
will see that before Jerry's here in August.
Yeah, so we just did an episode where for an hour and a half, me and a buddy of mine who love vintage animation and all that stuff talked about Chip and Dale. But to kind of run it briefly, yes, there's a lot of homage to classic Hollywood and classic animation.
Well, I will see that.
Yeah, I mean...
Did you like the film, though? I never watched Rescue Rangers because I was in my 30s when that was on.
Well, that's not going to matter because it's not a Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie.
Okay.
I did enjoy it, but I admitted to my friend, I'm getting a little tired of watching movies where the joy comes from referencing stuff that came before. Like, I don't know. It's kind of like, what would it have been like if they'd actually made a Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie? Like, it's kind of like, well, we don't believe in that concept, so we're going to have Chip and Dale running around Hollywood, and now we're going to reference, like, the old Popeye cartoons and Roger Rabbit and the motion capture thing that was a brief fad. I was amazed to see characters from South Park and Big Mouth in the movie because those are
I am going to see it, so don't spoil it for me. So
I don't know if that's too much of a spoiler, but
yeah,
you're going to be spending a lot of time going like, oh, I know that character. Oh, I know that character.
Well, Jerry loved it, and he told me, he said, you're probably not going to like it. And I said, no, if there's references to old cartoons, I love that kind of stuff.
Which they excel at. They excel at the references. Like that's probably.
Is there much of a story?
Not really.
Yeah, okay. All right.
They're,
that answered that.
Friends captured. They're trying to find him. And then there's like something about bootlegged cheap direct-to-video movies, which is a little ironic since this was
Yes.
sent straight to Disney Plus.
Right, got it. All right.
I mean, there's
All
like,
right.
it's kind of funny. You kind of wonder if anyone's really self-aware when they're making these things. But, for the price of admission, as they say,
Well, yeah, Disney Plus I get for $2.99 a month because I'm a Hulu subscriber, so it's worth it, I guess, for that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm starting to notice the trend, like, whenever they're going to, it's like, oh, it's a Disney Plus original, it's going straight to Disney Plus. It means like, okay, we don't believe that this movie is good enough to be worth spending money on. We know that the word of mouth is not going to be very good, so it's going to tank on the second week. Because that's one of the reasons that the streaming services do this, is because they can hide behind their numbers. Like, they don't have to show, which as a shareholder of some of these companies, I think they should be forced to share those numbers. It's like, well, how can I confidently invest in your company if you're not telling me what the numbers are, how much it is, like how long are they watching, how many are watching, like, and what does that mean as a value to the company? Like, I think that information should be made available, but right now it's not. So they can put a movie on Disney Plus or Netflix and they can say it's the most watched thing in our history ever. It's like, well, what's that look like, and what does that do for the bottom line?
300 clicks instead of 299 is what it means.
Yeah. Because, I mean, that's the thing. When you put something in theaters, there's like a dollar amount. It's like, okay, how much money did it cost to make Jurassic World? 300 million plus 100 million? Okay, how much did it make opening weekend? 263? That means it's projected to make 600 to 700. Okay, that's a success, right? But when you put it on Netflix and stuff, and Disney Plus, if they share the numbers at all, they're like, okay, we had 70 million people watch it. Well, what's that mean?
Yeah.
Like, did anyone sign up for it? Like, there's no ads on there, so like those eyeballs, like, it's funny because like when traditional TV came out, the reason they would brag about that Friends would have millions upon billions of viewers, because what they're doing is they're going to the advertisers and they're saying, so what's 75 million eyeballs worth to you?
Well, that's it. TV, you reach a much larger audience than you ever have with movies in the theater. You can say on TV that 50 million people saw this show. 50 million tickets sold to a movie is almost unobtainable.
Yep.
So
Even HBO figured out, like, they don't have ads on HBO shows. What they will do is they will have a sponsor for the show. And so whenever Game of Thrones came out, they could go and they could say, how many millions of people watch that show. Do you want to be the exclusive sponsor so that before the show is brought to you by this? And that 60 to 100 million viewers. I heard Game of Thrones had quite a crazy number of viewers, and it's like, to be the sponsor of that show is almost like being the official pizza of the NFL.
right, but that's an anomaly because most HBO shows, like I watch Bill Maher and John Oliver religiously, they only have a couple of million, if at most.
Yeah, but
and that's when they factor in all the rebroadcasts and the streaming.
Yeah, but the bottom line is, like, this is where the money is.
Right. No,
is.
I
So
get
when I see them sending it to Disney Plus, that's telling me something about the quality of the film.
Well, they want a lot of people to see it more than they would in the theater, and we're still in a pandemic here. But yeah, I mean, there's a quality difference there.
But the box office has definitely been very healthy. I mean, geez, Top Gun's doing very well, and so's Jurassic World.
Well, because we're at the end of this thing, and
Right.
people are fed up with staying at home, and they rather risk getting sick so they can get their lives back in order again. That's a whole nother thing.
That's a completely whole other thing for sure. But I do think that there is a statement being made, unless it's Netflix, because Netflix has been trying to undermine the whole ecosystem.
Right, they're trying to be the new way of people watching feature films,
Right.
but they're in trouble right now.
They are, well, and I always knew that they would be in trouble because their whole model did not make a lot of sense. Like, it always felt like a Ponzi scheme. Like, give us $10 a month and you can watch all of this stuff and we'll just keep dropping new shows. Like, I have like a filmmaker friend who said, like, yeah, I don't know why the studios are pushing. I mean, they've got this crazy idea that if they can get this many millions of subscribers at this price, and they're like one of the only game in town, then they can make this much money, and then they could like turn off the spigot and they could just collect money now.
Right, and that's why they keep raising their prices. They're almost as expensive as HBO now with not as good product. Right. I mean, there's so much crap on Netflix. There's so much stuff that's just not watchable.
But but then it doesn't. But the economics just still don't really support that, and
well, yeah, they 20 billion in debt, I think, something like that.
Yeah, like as my friend points out, and I agree with, he's like, yeah, like it used to be where you'd put the movie in theaters, and then you would rent it on pay-per-view, and then you would sell the VHS tape, and then you could rent it on Blockbuster.
That was the model for many years.
And then you could air it on TV, and it's like, and let's say okay, streaming replaces TV in this case. It's like, let's say if you kept that model, but you swipe out TV for Netflix, it's like, so you're selling that movie 4 or 5 times before you get here, but you want to just not sell it 4 or 5 times and just give them the free option?
Right, with the hope that more people are going to subscribe to see it. They've reached a saturation point now. They're going with to try to get more people to subscribe again. They're going with a commercial tier. They're going to charge less and stick in commercials like everybody else. But that's a turnoff.
But the funny thing about the commercials, and I've kind of told people this, that might be a good thing for the shows that you like, because one of the downsides to Netflix's model is that if the show is the biggest hit on the platform, it theoretically doesn't matter if nobody subscribed to watch that show, because it brought in no money at that point. But now, if it's the most watched thing on Netflix, now you can actually go to your advertisers and say, we're the most watched show.
Then you've become a network, a broadcast network. You're just like ABC and CBS, and they all start out with a couple of commercials, and then they go a long time. Roku Channel is still doing that. They'll have a couple of commercials, 2 breaks, 2 minutes each, which is fine. But what turns me off more is when I go to a thing and you see the opening credits for this thing on streaming, and then the ads start, and up in the top left corner, ad 1 of 12. Well, I am not, even if they're 10 seconds each, that's still, you got to sit through 12, and then, well, they're only 15 seconds each. That's 3 minutes. It's not a long time, but they got to load after each one. So when you figure in the loading time, it's 4 or 5 minutes by the time the show starts,
Now who's acting like the impatient millennial?
Well, millennials, again, don't have the patience. I'm an impatient, cranky old guy.
This is just the reality. Like, there's a reason the economics of television worked for so long as well as they did. And if you look at even the streaming services now, the most successful streaming services, the 3 most successful streaming services that were profitable. Let's put it this way. These are the 3 that were profitable.
I'll guess them. They're Amazon Prime, Hulu, and Netflix.
You got 1 out of 3 correctly.
Really?
You got 1 out of 3 correctly. Hulu is one of them. The other ones are Tubi and Crunchyroll.
I've never heard of that last one. It sounds like something you'd buy at a pastry shop.
So Crunchyroll is anime.
Okay, and I have no interest in that at all.
But the 3 things that these have in common: ads. Because the ads support them, whether they're paying for it or not, they make money.
Well, Amazon Prime is now doing ads. They've done ads for the last couple of years. They're annoying as hell, but they do them. And Amazon Prime gets $139 a year out of me, so I get 2 days shipping. So they should be profitable. They should be more profitable than Netflix. Maybe they are, but they didn't make the top 3.
The reason Amazon is not profitable is because first of all, they're doing the ads on their own to sell you other things. That's one reason. They're not charging other people to put those ads up. They're putting ads on because they want you to buy it.
But they're also collecting $139 a year from a hell of a lot of people to pay for that product.
But they don't count that for the streaming services. In fact, Amazon Prime is considered a bonus, so you are technically not paying for Amazon Prime Video.
Well, now with commercials, I certainly am not.
So that's actually one of their little tax maneuver things, because the way they have it set up, they're giving you Amazon Prime Video, so you are not paying for Amazon Prime Video. It's a gift.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, can I re-gift it to somebody else? Is there a complaint department that I can refund whatever? I don't use it that much because there's just too many commercials on it now. I did before. Netflix is probably not profitable anymore because they've lost so many subscribers.
They were never profitable.
Well, no, because they pump more money into they want to be in business with Norman Lear. They want to be in business with all these big shots, and they don't come cheap. And that's why they've got the deep pockets. They're never gonna. But I thought maybe with the subscribers, they're losing subscribers now because there's too much crap on there.
The economics of streaming is still being figured out. I remember after Coda won Best Picture, which was an Apple TV thing.
Yeah,
I read an article. I think it was in Variety where the guy questioned okay, they spent $23 million on this and they put it on Apple TV Plus, and now they've spent this much money to win Best Picture, but what do they get back out of that? And he ultimately surmised that right now it's fun to make movies, it's fun to make shows, but at some point these services, these big companies are going to realize it's not adding to the bottom line, and what happens to the ride at that point?
Well, that's happening to Netflix right now.
Yep, that's happening to Netflix. We're starting to see the beginning of what happens on Netflix. I made a video fairly recently because I know that Disney's going to have to start cutting back on some of their big spending. And I'm like, look, how about why don't they do this model? Why don't they have like one major show or movie a month? And then you could sprinkle in all this archive stuff throughout the year because you own it. It doesn't cost you anything to produce. You just have to put it up there. And
because people won't watch it except you and me.
But, but at some point, especially if there's only going to be like one major thing, someone's eventually going to get curious, especially kids. Like kids will stumble upon things and then they become unlikely fans. That's I was talking to someone who worried about the future because she remembered trying to show Jaws to a bunch of teenagers and they thought it was super corny. And I was like, don't ever try to base the future on what teenagers think of something, because if teenagers are always consistent in their belief that they don't want to conform, they have to, or oh no, what I told her was they are predictable in that they do not want to have predictable tastes.
Jaws is a great film, though.
Yeah, but you show someone who's not 13 yet Jaws and they love it. You show some of these Three Stooges shows to like a 5-year-old. I mean, it may take them a minute to get past the black and white thing, but if they actually just sit there and you can get them there for 3 minutes, by the end of that short, they'll want to watch another one.
Oh yeah.
So
kids haven't changed that much when they're young and impressionable like that. That hasn't changed in 50
years. So
years.
if you put this stuff on Disney Plus and primarily kids use Disney Plus, they will watch the stuff, and it's like that is free. It's like a free money thing for Disney.
I know, but they need people like you and me and Jerry Beck and Leonard Maltin to some extent to go in there and tell them that, or it's not going to get done. They're not looking at the stuff like that. They're looking at new stuff. Again, Disney is Star Wars and Marvel right now.
And here's the thing. What if no one... Okay, let's say you put up the Hardy Boys on Disney Plus and nobody watches it.
You're talking the original from the 50s, from the Mickey Mouse Club.
Yes.
Okay.
The one that when my parents vacationed at Lawrence Welcome, they used to have Vault Disney on the Disney Channel at night. That's when I watch
that all the time.
That's when I discovered the Hardy Boys show, and I loved it. I was actually upset when we had to leave, and they had not finished a case.
That's part of the Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah, that's part of the Mickey Mouse Club. Yeah. But let's just say theoretically you put it on Disney Plus and nobody watches it. Well, what did it cost you? It literally cost you nothing.
I assume they've got their own servers and their own cloud. So if they own that too, then you're right, nothing. But if they're paying a service to store that stuff, there's that, and that is a cost because it's got to be stored in high def. And as you'll see when you get this show from me, this is a very large file because we're going on 2 hours here.
Oh, we're going on to
so I don't even know. Is anybody watching us out there?
Honey, I lost the bet. You're right. It did go more than 2 hours.
It's not quite. It's
not quite.
You're just about there. But I think we've covered plenty for this.
I think we have.
I think you've got 2 shows here if you really want to know the truth.
Yeah, I could probably cut it in half like they did the last Harry Potter movie. Yeah. So anyway, folks, thank you for watching this discussion about physical media, cloud, vintage stuff. We want to know, what are your thoughts on any of this? And by the way, since you are watching this as a premiere, you know that we normally do with our live streams, if you sent super chats through the live stream, we would be answering those questions right about now. However, this has been pre-recorded and we are premiering it. So here's what we're going to do. Anyone that sent a super chat with a question, we will address that question in the next episode. Whatever that's about, we are going to make sure that next episode is a little bit shorter so that we can cover your super chats and your questions, provided they were asked within reason. Otherwise, we would love to know what you thought about any of these topics. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe. Thank you so much, Stu, for being on my show and letting me use your office.
Oh, well, studio.
Yeah,
studio office. Yeah,
the studio office. I'm gonna hopefully with your help we can make my office a little bit more visually appealing.
I'm happy to help you.
Thank you. So changes might be coming here as well because I think this was really nice, don't you? So anyway, thank him for being on the show. Thank him for letting us use the studio. And as always, flame responsibly, and you all have a good one. Take care. We are done.